Decided to bring this series back and to continue with a part 3. If you haven't yet watched the first 2 Hate Fest films, I recommend that you check those out first and foremost before you continue. So, as we've seen even more recently with the advancement of social media and the influence that it has, it's been pretty easy for fan bases to taunt and to express their displeasure with a particular player with ease. In this video, we're going to go over another handful of NHL players who were hated by their own fan bases. And with that, here are 5 NHL players who were or are hated by their own fan bases. Mitch Marner. A player who thoroughly impressed onlookers early on while playing for the OHL's London Knights, mainly for his ability to elude the opposition with his shifty stick handling and playmaking skills as well. Therefore, after being drafted alongside Connor McDavid within the top 5 in 2015, Toronto was confident that their 4th selection would be a corner piece that could help lead them deep into the postseason. Well, after having an impressive season during the 2018-19 campaign, Marner, after nearly reaching the 100-point plateau in a full season with 94 points, was sure to remember his worth in the following offseason. After receiving a generous offer from Kyle Dubas and company of $11 million for 7 or the max of 8 years, Marner decided that this wasn't enough to match his talents. Therefore, Marner's agent at the time, Darren Ferris, was holding out for even more, as he wasn't settling until the contract paid out at least $15 million in a single season. And after holding out and missing part of training camp, number 16 finally had his demands granted in the form of a very front-loaded contract that would be paying out around $41 million in total salary within the first few seasons, which made him the highest paid player league-wide in salary alone in the following season. As you may have expected, Toronto fans weren't too pleased with the signing, and have been sure to voice their displeasure with Marner in brutal fashion. As, according to Darren Drager, Marner wasn't able to escape the backlash. "I was walking my dog and I had 13-year-old kids yelling at me from across the park, screaming about not signing. That's the Toronto fan base. It's great to be part of it for another 6 years," Marner says. "I expected stuff to come at Darren and myself, but I saw a couple of comments about my father and stuff, like no one likes seeing that or reading," Marner says. "It was pretty disappointing to see some of the people express themselves about my family and my family name. And in case you thought that was the end of it, think again." Following yet another first-round exit at the hands of the Montreal Canadiens, Marner, who was the catalyst for a Canadiens 5-on-3 in Game 6 of the series. After losing to the underdog team in 7 games, again, Maple Leafs fans were quick to let Marner have it on social media. This even prompted names such as Jesse Pollock to speak out in Marner's defense. But after the Toronto Sun published a demoralizing front-page story, the media couldn't help but question the forward about the backlash. "I've deleted all social media, so I haven't seen anything said," Marner says. "But my agent called me and told me about it, and I don't know who put that story out there, but it's mean. I mean, it's just people trying to make themselves, I guess, noticeable," he says. Regardless, something tells me that this isn't the end of the criticism coming his way, unfortunately. Easily known as one of the best players to have ever played in the league, Mark the Moose Messier, despite his offensive talent, he's still one player that's particularly not appreciated in Vancouver. Well, you could say that his first impression in BC wasn't exactly the greatest. After being signed to a 5-year deal with a $6 million AAV, Messier decided he was going to keep his number 11 on his sweater, despite the fact that it was unofficially retired, due to the fact that former Canuck, who passed away tragically at the early age of 29, also assumed the same number. Messier, to this day, has been the only player to disregard that common courtesy. Anyways, this was also paired with the fact that Messier had been the one to shatter Vancouver's Stanley Cup dreams as well, as he was the player who scored the game-winning goal in Game 7 of the 1994 Finals. So it had to be at least awkward at first, a few years later, to witness the forward donning a Vancouver jersey. With a core of young players such as Pavel Bure, Trevor Linden, and the future seemed bright with Messier now on the roster, but things quickly began to unravel after Messier assumed captaincy, resulting in fan favorite Trevor Linden giving it up. And according to multiple sources, Linden felt that Messier's invasion of the dressing room was rather hostile. After apparent friction came between the two, Linden was then shipped off to Long Island to play for the Islanders. Following his 3 seasons spent in Vancouver, it became obvious that Messier wasn't quite living up to the hype, as he struggled to score more than 60 points in a season throughout his entirety as a Canuck. And just in case you thought the situation couldn't get any worse, well, guess again. After returning to the Big Apple and finishing out his career as a Ranger, years after the fact, Messier then decided that his former team had withheld $6 million from him in salary. This dispute was settled, and the Canucks, who initially bought out the contract, were forced to fork over more money to their former captain. So yeah, definitely public enemy number one in British Columbia, if you ask me. Not many players have particularly enjoyed playing in Ohio's capital city over the years, as many stars have come and went, unable to acclimate in Columbus. But after assuming that he would remain with the team that once drafted him, 11th overall in Philly, Carter was quickly given a reality check upon being traded to the Blue Jackets, and in turn, making Jacob Voracek a Flyer. And after the initial shock and dismay set in for Carter, he reportedly had to be persuaded to show up to play for the team by Jackets' former captain, Rick Nash. Following a previous 39 games played for Columbus, Carter was then traded to Los Angeles for defenseman Jack Johnson, after requesting a trade. Well, I guess you could say that things worked out in Carter's favor. 2 Stanley Cups later, that is, but even still, whenever Carter is in town in Ohio, fans are never shy about voicing their distaste for the former Jacket.
Carter, you suck!
And yet another not-so-loyal character here is Sergei Fedorov, a highly skilled two-way forward that Detroit luckily snagged from the 4th round that went on to win a slew of individual awards along with a trio of Stanley Cups in the Motor City. Despite this though, number 91 wasn't always fond of being a Red Wing. In fact, after having multiple 100-point-plus seasons with Detroit, he decided that he was going to go on strike and refused to report for his team at the beginning of the 1997-98 season. Fans' anger further boiled over after Fedorov then dealt his club another slap in the face by deciding to sign an offer sheet with the Carolina Hurricanes. Sound familiar? Valued at $38 million for 6 years. After forcing Detroit's hand, they relented and then matched the qualifying offer, but despite the fact that he would help his team capture 2 more Stanley Cups at that point, some fans still remained indifferent. And after really giving Wings fans a reason to despise him after refusing 2 contract offers from his team in 2003 and relocating to Anaheim, he was subjected to an onslaught of boos more often than not in the Motor City. Speaking of Jeff Carter, well, it just so happens that was the trade that ultimately set the stage for Jack Johnson's arrival in Pittsburgh. After not receiving an extension from CBJ, Johnson decided to join his good friend Sidney Crosby in the Steel City, after agreeing to a 5-year deal valued at $16.25 million. Well, you could say that the defenseman got off on the wrong foot to start with fans, as many thought that this was largely a handout to a player who had only mustered up 11 points in 77 games played in his latest campaign. Therefore, the reception from Pens fans to start wasn't exactly cordial, as it became a common, frequent theme to see Jack Johnson's name trending on Twitter, for all of the wrong reasons. Despite his play, however, the former Penguins GM often defended Johnson, while saying things such as, "He's never been given a chance here right from the start," Rutherford says. "I don't understand it. It's been extremely unfair to him. Extremely. He's a good player. I think he's doing fine. I think he's doing perfectly fine," he says.
And Jack's a good skater, good puck mover. He can play both sides. He can play on either specialty team.
But after a disappointing series against Montreal in the bubble last year, Rutherford then made the decision to buy out the remaining 3 seasons of Johnson's contract. Even though he was an analytics nightmare in the Berg, Rutherford still seemed remorseful while saying, "I didn't want to do it, but it's the new system we're in," he says. After securing a deal with the New York Rangers prior to being placed on waivers, it became humorously clear that some things never change.